Okay, the next item of business is an urgent SPCB question, and I call question number 1, Douglas Ross.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and can I remind the Chamber that my wife is a sergeant with Police Scotland, to ask the Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body what discussions it has had with Police Scotland about the policing of the For Women Scotland rally outside Parliament on the 4th of September regarding reports of disruptive behaviour by an individual and a lack of action taken against him by the police.
Claire Baker.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I can tell the member there was an immediate debrief from the Parliament's police unit after the For Women Scotland rally and counter-protest by Cabaret against hate speech. In the debrief, the Parliament's police unit advised on the steps they had taken to manage interaction between both groups. This included, following a request from For Women Scotland, the Parliament's police unit did ask the Cabaret against hate speech to turn down the volume of their music, a request which the police told us was complied with. It is for the police unit to balance the rights of protesters outside the building.
Douglas Ross.
I want to say from the outset, I am the strongest possible supporter of our police. They do an extremely challenging job in difficult circumstances right across the country, and particularly so here in our Parliament. But the images and the response last Thursday begs many, many questions. Instead of dealing with the problem, it looked like the police assembled a protective cordon around this individual to allow him to disrupt an organised rally that was trying to get a message across to this government. There was controlling and intimidating behaviour by one individual against those at the rally that was facilitated by the police. And Joanna Cherry KC has said that Police Scotland seemed unaware of their positive duty to facilitate the right to protest and speech. So can I ask the member on behalf of the corporate body, what further work and response does the corporate body expect from Police Scotland, and does she agree there should be a full statement from Chief Constable Joe Farrell, who has been silent on this issue, and at the very least there should be an apology from Police Scotland to For Women Scotland?
Claire Baker.
I understand the strong feelings around this issue, and the member's outlined his understanding of what happened outside. It is for the police to interpret that behaviour, and the issues that are raised are better directed to the police. The Parliament is responsible for security inside the building, but once it is outside, it is the police who make decisions and have to deal with protests outside. It's helpful if organisations let us know they're having protests, and For Women Scotland did let us know, and that was helpful. But once the event starts to take place and it's outside, it is the police's responsibility and their decision-making.
Trust.
I understand what the member is saying about it being a police responsibility, but she also accepted in her opening response that there was a full debrief immediately after. Therefore, the Parliament is involved. And just today we've had reports of a protest outside Parliament that was interrupted by constant tooting of a car horn, and the driver of that car was told to desist, and they did. So there are options available to the police that were clearly not taken last week. But can I ask the member on behalf of the corporate body about the Parliament's own protests and demonstrations at the Parliament policy? It states in here that there is a power of the Parliament to move the location of a protest to another part of the estate if the protester is asked to do so by a parliamentary official or a member of the Parliament's police unit. This would avoid obstructing others' use of the estate, or if it becomes evident that the protest is causing a safety risk to yourself or others. Has there been any discussion by the corporate body about Parliament using that power last week, why it wasn't used, and why this one individual was allowed to continually disrupt a peaceful protest that attracted hundreds of people in support of For Women Scotland?
Claire Baker.
The members referred to our protest policy. Within the protest policy, there are certain areas of the building which would be restricted, which includes the canopy to the building, and that's to ensure safe entry in and out of the building. Beyond that, it is the responsibility of the police to carry out policing of the area. We do meet with the police on an annual basis as a corporate body, but the security team do meet regularly with the police several times a month to discuss the protest activity and other activities that are relevant to the Parliament. But I emphasise again, it isn't for the Parliament to direct the police on their decision-making, and if there is any criminality that is taking place, it has to be referred and reported to the police.
Thank you. I've got a number of members wishing to ask supplementaries. I want to get them all in. They will need to, though, be brief. I call first Jackie Bailey.
The actions of one individual were designed to provoke and disrupt. He was literally trying to drown out the For Women Scotland rally and the voices of women who came to their parliament. The decibel level of the music played will have breached environmental health standards, and I can assure the corporate body that the volume was being turned up, not down. So can I therefore ask the corporate body not just to meet with Police Scotland, but also to meet with Edinburgh City Council so that protocols can be agreed to stop a repeat of the antisocial behaviour from this individual?
Claire Baker.
The member raises a number of points. I'll emphasise again, it is for the police to make decisions outside of the building. In terms of the activity that happened last week, the debrief that we received from the police said that the police made a request for the music to turn down and that it was complied with. I myself wasn't outside the building, so I can't give support to that or not support it. That's the information we have from the police. There is always a balance to be made outside Parliament. We are an open, inclusive Parliament, and at times there will be protest and counter-protest. I understand there are events outside today where there's protest and counter-protest. It is not for us to make a judgment on the activities that are being protested about outside or the issues that are being raised outside. It's for us to have a balance and make sure that people can protest in a peaceful manner.
Thank you, Pam Gosal.
I attended the For Women Scotland rally held outside the Parliament last week. It was a peaceful protest. Unfortunately, it was disrupted by a counter-protester who does not appear to have got permission to protest outside Holyrood like everyone else required to. This seems to be a breach of the Scottish Parliament's own rules, yet no action was taken against the protester. That women who were protesting to protect their rights in Scotland appear to have been treated differently to trans rights activists can give rise to perceptions of bias about the enforcement of these rules. That is an unacceptable situation for the Scottish Parliament to be in. So can I ask what action has been taken by the parliamentary authorities to ensure that everyone is being treated equally under the law?
Claire Baker.
Thank you. So, as I said, our protest policy is in place, and that's there to ensure that everyone can take part in protests in a safe environment. As I already said, For Women Scotland did inform us that they were planning to come outside the Parliament, and we do appreciate that, and we appreciate foreknowledge. Organisations or individuals don't need permission as such to protest outside the Parliament, and it's for the police to decide when someone is making a legitimate protest. I'm going to have to say again, it is for the police to decide how things are managed outside the building. We will have discussions with the police if we know protests are happening, and will advise. So we were aware that police, For Women Scotland did make us aware that an individual was expected to come along to the event that could be challenging to them. We gave that information to the police. It's up then to the police to decide what to do with that information.
Jeremy Balfour.
Presiding Officer, a number of female constituents from Lothian have been in touch telling me that they felt unsafe, insecure last week because of the behaviour of this one individual. Does the member, on behalf of the corporate body, agree with me that the behaviour of the individual in question was totally unacceptable and that women should be free to advocate for their rights without fear or abuse?
Rebecca.
Yeah, as I said, it's a balance between everybody being able to advocate for their rights and their feelings outside the Parliament. If people felt intimidated or threatened at the event, they should speak to the police officers who are in duty, and they can make a complaint in future if they feel that is, if it's a criminal offence. Unless a criminal offence has been committed, the police are there to ensure that safe protest can take place, and we need to balance the rights of everyone who comes to the Parliament.
Regan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I was also a speaker outside at the For Women Scotland rally last week. I did approach the police who were on duty at the time and requested that the volume be reduced so that everyone could be heard, and I was told that that was not going to be possible. At the same time, there were other protests there. Mothers for Palestine were seeking to read out the names of dead babies, a solemn and peaceful act. They were also being drowned out by the noise that was being created by the counter-protester. And both of these groups, mainly women, were subjected to very dangerous noise levels. We recorded them as being up to 116 decibels from one man with a sound system who was positioned directly between us all. So I think there are questions for police here, although I accept Claire Baker is not able to answer for them. Why did they permit that proximity? Why did they fail to act when safe limits were being breached? And what steps will the corporate body take with the police to ensure that women who are exercising their democratic rights are properly protected in the future?
Claire Baker.
When we have protests and counter-protests and we're aware of it, we will have prior discussions with the police, and we will request, advise that certain organisations are in different areas of the small space that we have. However, once people are outside, it is for the police to decide, and if someone moves somewhere else, unless there's a good reason for them to move, they would make a decision whether or not they can move somebody. But it is a police matter.
Thank you. That concludes this item of business. There will be a brief pause to allow front benches to change before we move to the next item of business.